This is Section 5 of the Third Geneva Convention. Relations of prisoners of war with the exterior. Article 69. Immediately upon the prisoners of war falling into its power, the detaining power shall inform them and the powers on which they depend through the protecting power of the measures taken to carry out the provisions of the present section. They shall likewise inform the parties concerned of any subsequent modification of such measures. Article 70. Immediately upon capture, or not more than 1 week after arrival to the camp, even if it's a transit camp. Likewise, in the case of sickness or transfer to hospital or any other camp, every prisoner of war shall be enabled to write direct to his family. On one hand, and to the Central Prisoners of War Agency provided for in Article 123. On the other hand, a card similar, if possible, to the model annexed to the present convention, informing his relatives of his capture, addressed and addressed and state of health. The said cards shall be forwarded as rapidly as possible and may not be delayed in any manner. Article 71. Prisoners of war shall be allowed to send and receive letters and cards. If the detaining power deems it necessary to limit the number of letters and cards sent by each prisoner of war, the said number shall not be less than 2 letters and 4 cards monthly, exclusive of the capture cards provided for in Article 70, and conforming as closely as possible to the models annexed to the present convention. Further limitations may be imposed only if the protecting power is satisfied that it would be in the interest of the prisoners of war concerned to do so, owing to the difficulties of translation caused by the detaining power's inability to find sufficient quality linguists to carry out the necessary censorship. If limitations must be placed on the correspondences addressed to the prisoners of war, they may be ordered by the power on which the prisoners depend, possibly at the request of the detaining power. Such letters and cards must be conveyed by the most rapid method at the disposal of the detaining power. They may not be delayed or retained for disciplinary reasons. Prisoners of war who have been without news for a long period or who are unable to receive news from their next of kin or give them news by ordinary postal route, as well as those who are a great distance from their homes, shall be permitted to send telegrams. I'm assuming that phone calls would be allowed and emails would be allowed today, but I'm not exactly sure. Okay, where are we? Telegrams. The fees being charged against the prisoners of war account with the detaining power or paid in the currency at their disposal. They shall likewise benefit by this measure in case of urgency. As a general rule, the correspondence of prisoners of war shall be written in their native language. The parties to the conflict may allow correspondences in other languages. Sacks containing prisoner of war mail must be securely sealed and labeled so as clearly to indicate their contents and must be addressed to the offices of destination. Article 72. The prisoners of war shall be allowed to receive by post or by other means individual parcels or collective shipments containing, in particular, foodstuffs, clothing, medical supplies, and articles of religious or educational or recreational character, which may meet their needs, including books, devotional articles, scientific equipment, examination papers, musical instruments, sports outfits, and materials, allowing prisoners of war to pursue their studies or their cultural activities. Such shipments shall in no way free the detaining power from the obligations imposed on it by virtue of the present convention. The The only limits which may be placed on these shipments shall be those provided by the protecting power in the interest of the prisoners themselves, or by the International Committee of the Red Cross, or any other organization giving assistance to the prisoners in respect to their own shipments only on account of exceptional strain on transport or communications. The conditions for sending of individual parcels and collective relief shall, if necessary, be the subject of special agreements between the powers concerned, which may in no case delay the receipt by the prisoners of relief supplies. Books may not be included in parcels of clothing and foodstuffs. Medical supplies shall, as a rule, be sent in collective parcels. Article 73. In the absence of special agreements between the powers concerned on the conditions of the receipt and distribution of collective shipments, the rules and regulations concerning collective shipments, which are annexed to the present convention, shall be applied. The special agreements referred to above shall in no case restrict the rights of the prisoners' representatives to take possession of collective relief shipments intended for prisoners of war, to proceed to their distribution, or to dispose of them in the interests of the prisoners. Nor shall such agreements restrict the right of the representatives of the protecting power, the International Committee of the Red Cross, or any other organization giving assistance to prisoners of war and responsible for the forwarding of collective shipments, to supervise their distribution to the recipients. Article 74. All relief shipments for prisoners of war shall be exempt from import, customs, and other dues. Correspondence relief shipments and authorized remittances of money addressed to prisoners of war or dispatched by them through the post office, either direct or through the information bureau provided for in Article 122, and the Central Prisoners of War Agency provided for in Article 123 shall be exempt from any postal dues, both in the countries of origin and destination and in intermediate countries. The relief shipments intended for prisoners of war cannot be sent through the post office by reason of weight or for other. If relief shipments intended for the prisoners of war cannot be sent through the post office by reason of weight or for any other cause, the cost of transport shall be borne by the detaining power in all the territories under its control. The other powers party to the convention shall bear the cost of transport in their respective territories. In the absence of special agreements between the parties concerned, the cost connected with transports of such shipments, other than the cost covered by the above exemption, shall be charged to the senders. The high contracting party shall endeavor to reduce, so far as possible, the rates charged for telegrams sent by prisoners of war or addressed to them. Article 75. Should military operations prevent the powers concerned from fulfilling their obligations to assure the transport of shipments referred to in Articles 70, 71, 72, and 77, the protecting powers concerned, the International Committee of the Red Cross, or any other organization duly approved by the parties to the conflict, may undertake to ensure the conveyance of such shipments by suitable mean, railway wagons, motor vehicles, vessels, or aircraft, etc. For this purpose, the high contracting parties shall endeavor to supply them with such transport and to allow its circulation, especially by granting the necessary safe conducts. Such transport may also be used to convey a correspondence, lists, and reports exchanged between the Central Information Agency referred to in Article 123 and the National Bureau referred to in Article 122. B. Correspondence and reports relating to the prisoners of war, which the protecting power, the International Committee of the Red Cross, and any other body assisting the prisoners exchange with their own delegates or with the parties to the conflict. These provisions in no way detract from the rights of any party to the conflict to arrange other means of transport, if it should so prefer, nor to preclude the granting of safe conducts under mutually agreed conditions to such means of transport. In the absence of special agreements, the costs occasioned by the use of such means of transport shall be borne proportionally by the parties to the conflict whose nationalities are benefited thereby. Article 76. The censoring of correspondence addresses to the prisoners of war or dispatched by them shall be done as quickly as possible. Mail shall be censored only by the dispatching state and the receiving state, once by each. The examination of consignments intended for prisoners of war shall not be carried out under the conditions that will expose the goods contained in them to deterioration, except in the case of written or printed matter. It shall be done in the presence of the addressee or a fellow prisoner duly delegated by him. The delivery to the prisoners of individual or collective consignments shall not be delayed under the pretext of difficulties of censorship. Any prohibition of correspondence ordered by the parties to the conflict, either for military or political reasons, shall be only temporary, and its duration shall be as short as possible. Article 77. The detaining power shall provide all facilities for the transmission through the protecting power or the Central Prisoners of War Agency provided for in Article 123 of instruments, papers, or documents intended for prisoners of war or dispatched by them, especially powers of attorney and wills. In all cases, they shall facilitate preparation and execution of such documents on behalf of prisoners of war. In particular, they shall allow them to consult a lawyer and shall take whatever measures are necessary for the authentic words authentication authentication of their signatures. It would help if I could speak properly sometimes. Oh, at least it's only English. At least I don't have to do this in French. Then we'd all be screwed.